Hello and welcome to Grand Rapids Community College and to the 2013 Women in Leadership Summit. My name is Ross and I am the president of both Women's Issues Now, or WIN, and College Democrats. And WIN has been working on this project for quite some time, and we are happy with the final product. We have a list of amazing speakers, very well-known women in their respective fields, and we're proud to bring them to you on campus today. I do want to take a moment and thank all of our outstanding co-sponsors. Without them and their financial support, this event would not be possible. We have GRCC Student Congress for making most of the financial support, Planned Parenthood Affiliates of Michigan, the Bob and Alicia Woodrick Diversity Learning Center of GRCC, the National Organization for Women, the Greater Grand Rapids Chapter, College Democrats, College Republicans, Stand Out, the Gay Straight Alliance, and finally the Black Student Union. So let's give them all a big round of applause. A few housekeeping notes. Water will be here shortly. There is quite a few events today and there was some staffing shortages. Bathrooms are located outside that hallway. If you have any questions, if you see anyone with one of these badges and it is blue and says staff, they can direct you at any time throughout the day. Both myself and Ari, who is out there, who is also the president of the Black Student Union, are the day of coordinators, so we'll be able to help you with any last minute needs. Please be aware that we are coordinating with a lot of classrooms today, so students will be coming in and out throughout the day, so please don't be too distracted. Please take lots of notes and be prepared to learn a wonderful insight from our speakers. And let me introduce to you Hilda Hulley, our Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic and Student Affairs.
Thank you, Ross. Good morning. You know, our students are awesome. We have like the best students that any institution can think that they could ever have. They put this whole day together. This is thanks to the leadership of Ross and Ariel, and we are really proud of them. We really thank you for your commitment of being here. I think this is gonna be a wonderful day. We wanna thank all of our speakers, the ones that are here now and the ones that are gonna be coming through the day, because they're going to be providing an extraordinary experience for all of you. I hope you enjoyed the day. On behalf of the president and myself, welcome to GRCC, and let's explore the women's issues now, okay? Thank you very much.
Our first panel is Leadership is Diverse, Sometimes Barriers May Be Broken. On the tables, you'll find bios of all of our speakers today. We are trying to save some time as far as introductions. Almost all of our speakers have submitted bios, and you can find those in those packets. We'll be having more printed throughout the day, and those will be available. So I'm going to turn it over to Elise, who will be moderating the first panel, if our panelists would be so willing to join us on stage.
Hi, I'm Elise. I'm the Vice President of Women's Issues Now at GRCC, and I'm going to be moderating this Leadership is Diverse panel. So if everyone on the panel could just say a brief introduction of themselves, that'd be great.
Buenos días. Good morning. My name is Lupe Ramos Montini, and I serve on the State Board of Education. I was elected in November the 6th, 2012, so I have been serving just for a few months.
Don't want to break any glasses up here. I'm Deb Bailey, and I'm currently on the Board of Trustees of GRCC, and my full-time position is I'm Director of Corporate Relations and Government Affairs at Steelcase in Grand Rapids, and I've been a committed community volunteer and served in a number of leadership positions over the last 50 years. Or maybe it's only been 48.
Good morning. My name is Danny Villela. I'm the West Michigan Field Organizer with Planned Parenthood Advocates of Michigan. I'm also on the board for Now GR and a member of this year's Rising Women Leaders program. I'm also involved with numerous women's rights groups around the city, including the Fountain Street Church Choice Fund, Stop WOW, and a variety of others.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Krebs. I'm the action chair for Now GR. I was elected earlier this year, so I've only been on the board for a few months now. And I graduated from Grand Valley last year, and I served in numerous leadership positions during my time there as well.
Hi, I'm Ariel. I'm president of Black Student Union here on campus. I'm also secretary or communications directors for Women Issues Now. And hello and welcome.
Good morning. I'm Rebecca Whitman, and I'm the campus police chief here at GRCC.
Thank you, guys. So clearly we have a lot of community leaders and activists on our panel today. My first question would be about what barriers did you have to break to get to the position you're in today? And whoever would like to start, go ahead.
I can start. So I think one of the challenges of doing activism work and doing leadership work and becoming a leader as a woman in the community, one of the things that I've had to overcome was youth. So it can be very challenging being a young person trying to break into leadership roles. A lot of more traditional leadership positions, certain types of boards, particularly for-profit boards, you need to be influential in a particular way, or you need to be able to contribute in particular ways, a lot of them having to do with money. And when you're very young, obviously, that's not typically a resource you have on hand. You have lots of time, lots of energy, but not necessarily a lot of those more material resources. And so it can be challenging to sort of get your name out there and get seen as a leader and as somebody who can bring valuable things to an organization. And so I think that's one of the challenges, especially coming out of college, right? College provides you with this great incubator to be an activist, and you can join college groups, and you can join student groups, and you can lead student groups. And then when you sort of graduate and you're out in the world, especially when you're in your early 20s, there's sort of this gap that makes it very, very difficult to get involved until you get a little bit older and sort of get a little bit more recognized and get a little bit more into further along in your professional career. And so I think barriers-wise, that's one of the things we need to work on as women, both in mentoring each other and bringing each other up the ladder, but also in realizing that younger people and younger adults have a lot to offer in the activist and organizing world, just not sometimes what we traditionally think of as resources.
I'll jump on because, boy, Danny really started a lot of things when I think about, starting back when. I also think in terms of one of the barriers is that, often you're raised that you can do things independently and that you can do them by yourself. And I think one of the gifts of working together is realizing it's all interdependency, it's all your networks. And so I think one of the barriers is that you have to find a way, and I'm not sure it's a barrier or an opportunity actually at this point, but to develop a network and put yourself in groups of people that support you, and not just that think just like you, but people that are committed, whether it's to social justice, whether it's the elimination of racism, whether it's empowering of women, but finding yourself a network and a community of practice that will support you in the highs and the lows, because you can't do it alone. And I think that youth is part of it, but I sit back, actually in this room, this was my first job in Grand Rapids, was as the house mother to the dorm next door when it was a dorm. And there was a number of senior people here that I asked for help. And so I think another barrier is that willingness to be vulnerable and a willingness to ask for help and to say, can you help open this door? Can you help me with this? I'm interested in this. And so that reaching out and finding your own voice. And so and again, I don't so much see it as a barrier as an opportunity, because if you do that, others it just happens. You will be brought along, and you will end up in a wonderful community of practice, and you will have support. And also, I guess I would say, eliminate those naysayers in your life. You know, that, now hopefully it's not your parents or a sibling, but you know, there'll be people who say, well, why would you want to do that? Or you can't do that. You know, that's fine. They can have their point of view, but surround yourself with people who believe in you.
Absolutely. As you see, I think I'm the only Hispana in the whole room. Any more Hispanos in the room? 2, 3. Okay, we are very few in most places, but I have taken that as an opportunity, not a barrier. So I have been able to infiltrate because I'm a risk taker. You have to be a risk taker if you want to be a leader. And like it already been said by Deb, you have to surround yourself by people that are positive. Now, I'm a Latina, I'm from Texas, I'm from Mexican background, and so they could have been barriers, but I did not allow that to happen to me. I have been a pace setter in many different circles within the city. Take for instance, the Hispanic Center of Western Michigan. When we started that center, we started with $1. We bought that for $1 from the city, and it's thriving right now. It's $1 million institution serving the community. I was able to be the first in many different circles. I was a teacher by profession, and so I thrived I was the only member of the Michigan Education Association, Latina, that was involved in politics. Now, my leadership I wanted to use in different ways. I wanted to be, of course, a mother. I wanted to be an education leader. I wanted to be a political leader. And so my opportunity to serve, the only Latina in MEA at that time, involved in politics. I wanted to be an elected official. So in order to become an elected official, you have to be involved in politics. And many people say, well, I don't want to be involved in politics, and I don't want to be involved with a party. But if you want to be a statewide elected official in the state of Michigan, you have to belong to a political party, because they elect you first, and then the public, the citizens of the state elect you. So there's many different things that I have done to remove barriers, because barriers, anything can be a barrier, because I'm brown, because how I dress, but don't allow those things to come into your path because you want to be a leader. And I commend all of you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Lupe. So women are occupying non-traditional roles. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I'll just pull it closer. I will agree with everything that they've said as well. But another thing that is a barrier, especially for young women going into maybe non-traditional roles, is your own self-confidence. So don't let that get in your way. Surround yourself with positive people, but make sure you stay positive and driven and know where your goals are, and don't let anything get in the way of that. Sometimes we as women will say, yeah, gee, I don't know if I can do that. You won't know until you try. So that was probably my biggest barrier that I had to overcome when I was 19 years old getting into this business.
So women are occupying non-traditional roles, as Police Chief Whitman just said, more than ever nowadays. So why is being a leader important as women?
First, when I was younger, my mom was a leader to me. She was in school, she was raising my sister and I, and she always made sure that we found our voice and we were able to, I guess, be an example for people coming up under us and people around us. And it was important for me to become a leader, more specifically in college than anywhere else, because I have younger cousins who are looking up to me and have no idea what the real world is like outside of our neighborhood back in Detroit. So to show them that I'm a leader, hard work is paying off. I'm positive about everything that I do, and I'm meeting awesome people every single day, and I'm opening up doors for myself. It's just like the best thing that I could have ever done or ever be able to do for other people. Being a leader is basically my whole life. Without it, I have no idea where I would be.
One of the things I decided early on in my career was that working road patrol was fun, but there weren't a lot of female supervisors, and we were hiring a lot more female officers. And myself and a few of my friends decided, hey, you know what, these girls need role models. They need people that show them that you can be a sergeant, you can be a lieutenant, and that was how we decided we could make a change within the department, was to take those roles of responsibility and not just leave those up to, you know, I'll say it, the good old boy system is what was out there when I first started. Whether you refer to it as that or the glass ceiling, you know, we had to make a difference, and we had to teach the younger females that were coming in what they could do, and what changes could be made if we were willing to take the risk and take those exams, and be part of making policy.
You know, it's interesting. I had the experience when I was young to live overseas in a third world country and travel in places like Egypt and Pakistan and Afghanistan. And I came back to the States, and it felt like it was a moral obligation to be a leader, because by accident of birth, I ended up, 20 steps ahead of the vast majority of the population of the world. And you just realize how blessed and lucky you are, but there's still a lot of work to do. And so the important part is that together we can accomplish great things. And so I sit back, even in my lifetime, but knowing that I was the first ever woman on the board of directors of Junior Achievement. There was a time when there was a perceived shortage of talented women out there. Well, there was a lot of them out there, but there just weren't that many visible. So a number of us got tapped all the time, over and over and over. And so I think as a leader too, it's a responsibility to be out there in front, but to make sure that you're bringing up the rear with a lot of other capable and competent women in the community. I never leave a board now without coming up with the names of 2 or 3 other younger women that are very, very capable to take the place. And it's been great to watch all of these boards over a 30, 35-year period are now, depending on the board, a half to a third representing diverse populations. And it's not just women. I think it's important as a leader that you're looking at all dimensions of diversity and making sure that we're just making sure that all of our organizations, profit or nonprofit, really reflect the community and the people that we serve. So I really see it as an obligation. It's the old, to those much is given, much is expected.
And I'll reiterate what Deb said. I think that one of the reasons it's important as a woman to be a leader is because women are half the population. So we should be in as many leadership positions as our male counterparts. Purely logistically, that makes sense to me. But I think also there are institutions, there is that good old boys club, right? There's sort of these social norms that naturally put men into the pipeline for a lot of leadership positions. And women, when we're given the opportunity, have a tendency of doing exactly what Deb was talking about, which is we practice mentorship, we practice bringing each other along in a very real way. It's how I got to where I am. It's what I'm hoping to do for the younger people that I work with. It's the lesson I learned from the older women who brought me up and put me into these positions. And so I think that once we get in those leadership roles, it just snowballs. For every one woman who becomes a leader, she's bringing up 5, 10 other younger women behind her. And so it grows very, very rapidly, but it is very important that we get a few of us into those places to begin with. Otherwise, we just sort of never break through that sort of natural cycle of men bringing in other men. And I want to be clear, excuse me, and a lot of times it's not direct sexism. It's not always men saying women can't do this. It's that they don't know us, they don't see us, we aren't in those non-traditional job positions, so there isn't a large pool of candidates to draw from. There are definitely times where it is institutionalized sexism, I think, but in a lot of cases, it's just a matter of the fact that we aren't in front of them as candidates. And so it's easier to pick from who's directly in front of you than it is to go looking. So once we get there and we make each other known and put our names in the hat, it does snowball very, very quickly.
They just said everything that I was thinking. It is really important that as a woman that you try and move up the ranks or become a leader, and making sure that you have great mentors to lead you and bring you along is very, very important. And I've had those leaders throughout my time as on campus at Grand Valley. I was in multiple different student organizations where I was just a member for many years because I didn't believe that I had the capacity to move up as a leader, but then I had those mentors who really taught me that it is important and that I had the capacity to do that.
Thank you. So I guess maybe my next question would be, so how did you get to the position where you are now as a leader?
You know, there's a lot of steps to becoming a leader. But remember, a leader is not a leader if you don't have followers. So those people that have been mentioned that we mentor, if you don't have those people that you mentored in different positions throughout the system, whether it be educational, political, community, family, church, if there's those people that you mentored settled in some of those positions, then you're not a leader, because a leader has to have followers. So what got me to this position? Hard work, mentoring others to follow me. Now, in the political arena, it has been difficult to get more Hispanos involved in the political field. However, there's many involved in community positions, and we're getting more informed, we're getting more educated, and we're getting more involved. And there's more of us running for office. So it is very important that once you serve in a committee, in your community or in a political position or whatever it might be, don't just have your name on the roster as, oh, Lupe is in every roster. If your name is on the roster and people see your name, the people are gonna say, oh, Lupe's name is there. Oh, she's the one that did this, and that. So if you're on a roster just to have your name on the roster, you don't attend the meetings, you don't participate in committee work, you don't bring others aboard, then you're not meeting your obligations, so your name shouldn't be on a roster. So when you become part of a committee and you consider yourself a leader, be an active leader. That's very, very important.
That's interesting, because Lupe and I were talking about this earlier, and I think, you know, I make jokes, but it's true. If you show up and you do what you say you're going to do, you end up being an officer. You end up being on the executive committee, because, you know, Lupe and I could sit back from, you know, a lot of years of experience and look at letterhead from all of the major nonprofits in this community, and we probably could check off who are what I call letterhead people, and who are around people that do the work. And if you think about it as your brand, you want your brand to be about the right stuff. And lots of times when you've been the president of an organization, you end up being on the nominating committee afterwards to pick additional leadership. And Grand Rapids is a wonderfully polite community, like many other polite communities. And I've been in so many meetings where someone will say, well, what about so-and-so? And they bring up someone's name, and there's this pregnant pause. And then somebody says, well, how about so-and-so? Because it's kind of what's not said is that, no, doesn't show up, doesn't do what they say that they're going to do. So I think it's really important to do that. The other thing is you have to be willing to be open to feedback. And you got to ask for it, and you got to authentically ask for it, and take it and learn from it. So I've found probably the best thing is I've surrounded myself with great bosses over the years. And whether it's my boss at work or my boss, the president of a nonprofit, where you ask for feedback. And I've gotten some really tough feedback. And I was telling Lupe, and this was probably the hardest feedback I got early in my career. I was a pleaser, so I took on too much work because I want to make everybody happy, because I'm a lover, not a fighter, and so I'm going to make everybody happy. Well, I couldn't deliver on what I had taken on. And my boss said, you know, Deb, the problem with that is everybody really likes you. So they're not going to tell you you're not delivering, because they're not going to want to hurt your feelings. Well, what an awful spot to be in 10 years down the road, to not have somebody telling you the truth because they like you. Well, that also means you're not going to get new assignments. You're not going to get a leadership role, because just because you're likable doesn't mean you can actually move the needle and move an organization, you know, forward. So surround yourself with people, too, that'll give you the harder truth, as my daughter calls it, and then thank them for that. And listen to it. Now, that doesn't mean getting one crabby boss and listening to everything they say. You want a wide variety, kind of a 360 point of view. But I think that's very, very important.
Ditto to Lupe and Deb. Are you sensing themes? For me, how I got here, and what I always recommend to people is, I always joke that I got here accidentally. I have a degree in cultural anthropology. I wanted to work internationally. I knew I wanted to work with women's issues, but I was not going to be in Grand Rapids. It's not my plan. And I always joke that I got to this position accidentally. I got to my leadership roles accidentally. But in a few ways, it's true. It really came about from opportunities being put in front of me and me just going ahead and grabbing a hold of them. Not necessarily knowing exactly what I was getting myself into all the time. Not even totally confident that, yeah, I can do this. Just saying, well, there's an opening, there's a spot, there's an opportunity. Nobody else is doing it. I've got some time. Let's test it out. And not being afraid to do that, and thinking of things as a journey, recognizing that none of this work is permanent. You take a job, you don't have to be there for 35 years. You're not signing your life away. You can try it for a year or two, and if it's not what you're good at, then let's be honest with ourselves and our bosses and say, this isn't where I need to be, and move on. And really sort of treating my career that way has gotten me to a place where, quite frankly, there isn't a single other thing I could put on my plate. And that wasn't through necessarily even actively seeking. It really was, as Deb said, showing up, doing the work, being there, having that attached to my name, and there is no dearth of opportunities that will end up coming your way. And you sort of inevitably end up in leadership roles when you do it that way. And to reiterate again, the opposite is also true. It becomes very, very obvious when a group, a committee, a board, whatever it is working really, really hard, and you're the one who isn't. You will very quickly be shut out of the sort of opportunity chain that will happen there. And I think that taking those risks and taking those opportunities is really the easiest way to get started in this work, and the easiest way to find yourself being a leader. I also think for me, not defining exactly what leadership looks like. So it's not an end result. There isn't a point where I'm like, oh, I'm not a leader yet. Oh, I'm not now I'm a leader. That's what a leader looks like. As Lupe said, a leader is somebody that has followers. So whether you're the head of a group of 5 people, whether you're leading a family, whether you're leading a department, whatever it is, you need to take that leadership role just as seriously as if you were whatever your higher level, the president of an organization, the CEO of an organization, right? Leadership happens in stages, and it happens in levels, and each one of those roles is equally important for you to exercise and practice those leadership skills.
I think piggybacking up what they were saying about showing up and doing the work and getting stuff done rings very true. When I was in student organizations in college, I did all of those things. I would show up, I would do the work that I was supposed to do, I would go above and beyond. But I still didn't think that I had leadership opportunities within myself until I had mentors who really pulled that leader out of me. So in addition to that, aside from showing up and doing the work, I think what really propelled me into becoming a leader, besides my mentors helping me along the way, is my passion and my drive for getting or for change, there were a lot of issues that I was really passionate about, and I was vocal about them. And it wasn't until I actually became a leader that I realized that the things that I thought were important actually were, and I could use my position to get a lot more things done than what I was doing just as a member.
I guess one of the ways that that I got to my position was just continuing to put one foot in front of the other. I never wanted to be a police chief, but yet I am. That was never an ultimate goal of mine when I started in police work. I wanted to be a street patrol officer. In high school, my mom said, well, you know, if you want to do that, why don't you just go into the Army? I'm like, okay. So I looked into that, and she said, no, I meant, if you're going to do that, why don't you go into police work? At least then you'll be home. Okay. Well, 2 years later, I was a police officer, and so when the testing came up, again, it's one foot in front of the other. Okay, I'll take the test. I don't know if I'll pass. I've only been here 5 years. Oh, I passed. I'll pass, but I don't know if I'll get promoted. I got promoted. So you do the work, you take the risks, and that's the big part of it is if you're going to be a leader, again, a lot of us didn't start out to be a leader. You become a leader through the actions that you take as you go along the way. And that's how you get the followers, and that's how you're able to make decisions to improve yourself. And a thing that we talk about in police work a lot is, you know, ethics, integrity, doing the right thing at the right time for the right reasons. If you're taking on a role for something other than the right reason, you're not going to be successful in it. So if you believe in something and you feel it's the right thing to do, and you take that step forward and you find out it was the right thing to do, the next thing you know, there'll be another opportunity presented. And then you look within yourself, is this the right thing for me at the right time? You take that step forward, oh, it was the right thing at the right time, and it's worked out well. Or if it's not, you'll realize it and you'll take a step back, and then you take a step forward in another direction. And the next thing you know, 30 years down the road, you know, you've become something that you may have never dreamed of. So be willing to take the risks and continue to step forward every day.
Yeah, I do have something to say. With taking risk and stepping forward, I guess I have to go back to having faith in yourself, that you will have those followers, those mentees, those mentors, those teaching moments that will give you the confidence to know that deep down you're a leader. Whether you're here, you're a leader. And as long as you believe in yourself every single day, even if you have to have a sticky note saying you're a leader, you're awesome, you're doing it, that makes the journey, that makes being a leader that much more important because you believe it and you live it and you're an example for everybody else around you.
So what are some obstacles that you might have faced as leaders who are also women in your fields?
I'll be happy to start that one. Grumpy old men who didn't think we should be in the field. Bottom line. Truly, you know, when I went to the police academy, you know, that was back in 1987. And there weren't a lot of women in the field of police work. So a lot of the men that were in the police department that came on in, say, the 60s, like before I was born at that point, they didn't sign on to work with me. And I understood that. So I didn't hold it against them that they didn't want to back me up on my traffic stops, that when I called for help, when we had a man at gunpoint, the guy called out his own traffic stop and he hadn't made one in 3 weeks, 2 blocks away from where we were. You know, it was a choice he made, but my choice was, you know what, he just doesn't understand. We can do this job. The people that I went to the police academy with, the men that I went to, they trusted us from the beginning, most of them, because they went through it with us. So I could have been resentful. I could have held, you know, a lot of animosity against some of the older men that ended up being my mentors over time. One of my third shift partners said to me one time, don't spend so much time trying to prove you can do this job, just do it. And it was the best advice I think I ever got because there were women who wanted to prove that they could do it. So they were the fastest and the toughest and the most willing to get into a fight. And those of us who became respected quickly amongst our male peers were those who just came to work, took our calls, and went home at the end of the night without making a big deal out of the things that we did. But truly, for me, that was one of the biggest challenges early on.
Yeah, I'm sitting back because I'm not coming out of a non-traditional field at all. And having worked I started out in education, I was in social work for probably the first 10, 12 years, and then I've been in business and industry the last 30-something. And part of it is I've picked institutions that have the right DNA for me. And I couldn't work for an institution that has a bad corporate reputation. That's just not who I am. So by picking companies, I worked for Aquinas College. Well, the Dominican nuns, you couldn't find better role models for strong women. I worked at Herman Miller. Half of the sales force at Herman Miller and now at Steelcase, they're women because the fields around design, that's been a large population of women. So I've picked organizations that, for my paid jobs, that really, that's who they are. And they're not perfect, and they set goals. And now one of my areas of responsibility is around inclusion at Steelcase. And how do we, not just gender, but age, sexual orientation, global orientation, how do we really demonstrate cultural competency? So, and I don't want this to sound like a cop-out, but I think you also have to find a community of practice, organizations that are the right fit for you. Not that it's not going to be a fight, because there's always going to be things that need to change and improve. But that's what's helped me. And it was interesting, I said to someone the other day in Grand Rapids that I think it's been harder being a single person in Grand Rapids than a woman in a leadership role in Grand Rapids. Because Grand Rapids is very much of I call it Noah's Ark society, 2 by 2 by 2 by 2. All the dinners are 8 tops or 10 tops. You're not on the golf course. You're not belonging to the country club because in my lifetime, there wasn't women that could join on their own. So sometimes all those networks and the stuff that happens after work, after the board meetings, that happen at the schools or happen at the country clubs, you may not be a part of that. And so that's where you have to find ways to be creative and say, okay, yep, that's just who I am. That's not anything negative. So how do I find a way to fit in other ways too?
Well, originally I'm from Texas. I am a woman, and I am Latina. But, all of those could have been obstacles for me to get where I wanted to go. But I refused to allow them to be obstacles. Now, I was a teacher by trade. I taught for 30 years here in the Grand Rapids Public Schools. And I wanted to be a principal. So I became a principal. I didn't like being a principal. I wanted to be with the students, so I went back and I said to the superintendent, I want to go back to the classroom. So there were opportunities for me to move into, not, I guess you might call them higher positions, but to me, the highest position in education was being with the students, teaching the students, being in front of the students. So in my profession, in my career, I didn't have obstacles. If I wanted to have gone higher, I could have gone higher, but I chose to stay with the students. Now, with the community, I've done many different things, and I guess the reason why I have been allowed to serve in all these different capacities is because of what I said before. When you see a name on a roster, you say that person is a worker. If you assign that person, she's going to produce. And so that's how I have been involved with many different groups. Now, in my political career, I said to you before, you have to go through a political party to get to the position that I hold now. I guess that was one of the obstacles I had because I wanted to run for statewide office. a few cycles ago, but when you belong to a political party, it's not when you want to, it's when they want you to. So I guess that was an obstacle, because I would have loved to have been a state board member like 3 cycles ago. And the cycles, my term is 8 years, so that was a long time ago, right? So I would say that would have been an obstacle. But if you prove yourself, and like, again, I say, when you have your name in any roster, and people look at your name and they know that you're going to produce, you are going to be successful, and you are going to be asked to be leading an organization or within your job or whatever. Now, let me caution you about something. Having your name in 10 different places does not make you the most credible leader, because people say, how in the world can that person produce in all these positions? So be very careful that you're selective. Like Deb said, things that you really tie in with your leadership style and what you can do and your time. Because if you're overburdened, you're not going to be productive. And so be real careful as you move into leadership positions that you don't say amen, yes to every opportunity that comes your way.
I do have to add to that, because, and know how to quit. That it's okay to quit. Don't just not show up, but resign and quit. And don't get, sometimes you can get caught up in the prestige of things. I was asked by Mayor Logie to be a parking commissioner for the city of Grand Rapids because they needed a woman. I guess that was the deal. So anyway, I took this position. I was terrible. I was miserable. I was not prepared. I didn't care about parking. Parking, it does not motivate me to too much of anything. And I realized I had just gotten caught up in the status or the prestige, or because I have a hard time saying no. And after about 7 or 8 meetings, I realized what a disservice I was doing myself, what a disservice I was doing women, and what a disservice I was doing the city, because I was not coming to these meetings prepared. I didn't have a point of view. I wasn't advocating. And I needed to resign gracefully and get somebody else's butt in that seat that could really make a contribution to moving downtown forward. So know how to quit, and it's okay to quit, but also just know when sometimes it's not about you, you're being asked because of something else. You're being asked because of your connection to a party, because of your ethnicity, because of your access to corporate resources. So know why you're being asked to, and that's okay, because, you know, in a lot of places it's Deb Bailey, comma, Steelcase. And I know that, and you need to be well aware of it and not get sometimes caught up in thinking, oh, it's all about me, because it might be about a lot of other attributes.
Just very quickly, I think the number one obstacle, especially when you're up and coming and sort of trying to get your name out there, is time, straight up time. There's not enough of it. You say yes to too many things. You're super, super busy. And the next thing you know, your brand, your personal brand is busy. You'll stop getting asked to do things because, you're not going to ask her. She's going to be way too busy. And so you start missing out on all of the opportunities you've been trying to get yourself in a position to be offered, because there's this perception that you've got too much going on. As Lupe was saying, with having your name down on 10 things, if you're not actually delivering on those 10 things, doesn't do you. It actually harms your reputation over time. And I think it's a hard lesson to learn. I think it's a hard lesson to learn for women. I think it's a hard lesson to learn if your focus is on community activism, that sort of volunteering side of things, and that's what really drives you and really motivates you. We want to be seen as being able to do it all. We want to say yes. We want to be helpful as we can possibly be. And part of the challenge is that, you're not helping anyone, and you're certainly not going to be able to help anybody long term if you burn yourself out 3 or 4 years into your career. So it's really that time management piece is really challenging, but I think it's a really important lesson for leaders to learn.
So we are nearing the end of this panel discussion. Maybe we should end. What are some suggestions for future women leaders? Oh, does anyone from the audience have any questions for the panel? You can think about it. Let us know. So go ahead.
Some suggestions, balance. Again, you've heard themes throughout, but you need to keep balance in your life, whether that's your friends, your family, the different areas that you volunteer in or that you work in. Keep an equal balance and understand what each role plays in what role you play in each of those organizations, and what role you play in your family. When I took this job, my son said in front of other people when I was asked, well, how's it going? His comment was, she's happier at night. He was 11 at the time. Something I didn't realize was that my former position and how it was affecting me in my private life obviously affected him. So keep that balance. And again, back to something I said earlier, be willing to take risks, because you never know what the benefit's going to be and where it's going to take you if you're not willing to take those risks. And as women, surround yourself with those positive people that are going to encourage you. And if somebody tells you you can't do something, use that as motivation and prove them wrong.
To piggyback off of balance, I just had a conversation with my sister yesterday, and she said to me, when do you have time for yourself? Never, ever forget your star player, yourself. Even if you have to take 5 minutes in your car and just calm down, get your breathing together, and just talk to yourself. Because as soon as you forget, oh my gosh, I have not literally had a time to think about whatever it is that I have to do for me, you're gonna not be successful in your day. When I forget to simply tell myself, today's a good day, happy Monday, then I'm like, oh my God, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and it's gonna affect me through the whole day. You have to make sure that you make time for yourself, even if it's 5 minutes before bed or as soon as you wake up.
So future leader advice, 2 bits. One, leadership is about people and about relationships, not about power. So I've worked under a lot of leaders who are terrible people, not fun to work with. They don't have a good time, they can't relax, and they don't treat the people around them well. They treat their mentees or colleagues as labor, as, you know, what can you get done for me? That's not how you become a leader. I think that's really important to remember, and it can be very difficult to remember that sometimes when you're stressed or the team that you're working with, you feel like you're kind of dragging, kicking and screaming into getting stuff done. It can be very hard to remember that, but it's first and foremost about relationships with actual people. And then second of all, I think it's about grace, so that the time piece and that balance piece. The fact that you're going to be in difficult situations, you're going to be tired, you're going to work with a variety of different personalities, and that knowing really who you are, and that being able to be graceful under fire and to maintain your sense of calm is what's going to make people want to be a leader in your, follow in your path. One of the sort of startling bits of advice I received is when I was in the presidency for now, I was trying to train my successor. Always be training your successor. Always be bringing up the next person to replace you. And I tried for years to get people who could do that. And I couldn't find anyone. And I finally asked one of my board members, what is it that you don't want to do here? I'm offering you to mentor you as the president of this organization. And they said, I can't do what you do. We can never do what you do. Look at how busy you are. And I went, oh God, the better I get at this, the less likely I am to find a replacement. So really that, making sure that you're letting people, really see what the work takes, that vulnerability piece of it, and also making sure that you're doing that people work and that grace work, and that you're not this super stress ball all the time, because no one will want your job and you'll never be able to leave.
So true. Well, a couple things, and it started with the balance. Two sayings that I've kind of tried to keep in the forefront. One is, if you don't take care of your body, then where are you going to live? And I think this is around that balance. And then the other one was Gloria Steinem when she was here 25 years ago. She had a quote that said, if you don't take care of yourself first, women, you're not going to be able to take care of anyone else. And I think that is just, and it's whether it's men or women, anyone that is in a position of responsibility, that you have to take care of yourself first. Easier said than done. And I always use kind of the expression to calibrate often. Kind of look at what's on your plate. And I have a rule now, nothing new goes on my plate without two things coming off. But if I'm taking them off and I'm throwing them to people behind me in terms of chronological age, that's a good thing. That's new ideas, new thinking. And, you know, it's kind of like you have your first house. You do all the work the first 7 years. Same thing when you're on a board. All your ideas are the first 5 to 6 years. And I think the worst thing you can do is not know when to leave to free up the spot. The other thing, and I think it's interesting, is take your kids along. And that my daughter attended all the YWCA board meetings with me, and she went to the meetings on the condition that I'd take her swimming afterwards. But she got a chance, though, to see community leadership, volunteerism, and it got her into a diverse setting. So I think there's a way to include your loved ones in these activities. I've also put down go first. And I was a high school speech teacher when I first got out of college, and I'd always say to the most nervous speaker, go first. Because when you're speaking, nobody's even listening to you. They're just worried about themselves. So get it over with. So when you're in a class, when you're at a committee, speak first. Because once you do it, then you go, phew, got that over with. And I think the other thing is, learn to pick up a microphone. Because if you're even sort of comfortable, and you never get completely comfortable, except Sarah Smolinski, Judge Smolinski does back there, but the rest of us always get a little nervous. But if you are willing to pick up a mic, you will get a lot of airtime. And if it's around things you're passionate about, women's issues, social justice, equity, you want the mic. You want the mic as much as you can possibly get it. So go first, find yourself, place yourself in uncomfortable situations, learn how to wear jackets that don't show perspiration stains when you're in front of a group. But if you do it, you will get more opportunities than you'll know what to do with.
Wow, everybody has said everything that I wanted to say. But last night, my 4-year-old granddaughter called. And when I got home, I had meetings the whole day. I didn't stop till midnight. So I got a call from Amelia about 5:30, and I was, I don't know where, some meeting. And her message was, I love you, Grandma. I want to go to your house. And so Grandma was not home. So how did I feel? And I didn't even have time to call her back because I had all these responsibilities of a gala that I'm putting together for Thursday. So don't get into that rut. Don't get into that big, surmountable responsibility that you don't have time for the Amelias in your life. You have to balance your time. You are first. Again, I say, you are first. Don't get stressed out. You do the best that you can, and every job that you take, every opportunity that you take, do the best that you can, and that's all you can give. So I wish everyone here in this room, especially the young ladies and young men that are here present, that you take our advice seriously. We know what we're talking about. That's why we study history in school, in universities, and there's historians all over the world, because history is very, very important. So take what we're saying to you to mind and heart, because we want you to be the best leaders yet. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, ladies. Your guys' leadership in the community is inspirational. So it's time to move on to our next panel. I want to thank you all for being here, and it's been a great discussion. Thank you.
All right, everyone, we're about to begin our public officials panel discussion. On the program, you'll see that we have one panelist missing, City Commissioner Ruth Kelly. Her husband had surgery this weekend. He is doing fine, but she wasn't able to make it today. So, if the four of you would be so kind as to just give a quick, brief introduction of yourself, your name, your title. We do have bios for all of you on the tables, but if you could go ahead and start with us, clerk.
I'm Mary Hollenrake. I'm the Kent County Clerk and Register of Deeds. I hold 2 constitutional offices. I have been the Clerk Register of Deeds in Kent County since 2001.
My name is Sarah Smolensky, and the last time I had somebody say we have a file on all of you, I can't remember, but it makes me nervous to hear that. Just kidding. Okay, I am the chief judge at the 63rd District Court. We're located at Knapp and the Beltline. I'm one of 10 kids. I'm number 8. I have 8 sisters. I had one brother who also was a judge, and our father was a judge. So I'd like to think of us as a little bit of a family of judges. Born and raised right here in Grand Rapids.
Candace Chivas, Kent County Commissioner. My district is District 17, which is Southeast Grand Rapids.
I'm Winnie Brinks. I'm the state representative for the 76th District right here in Grand Rapids. It's about half of the city of Grand Rapids, and I am currently serving my first term in the state legislature.
Well, hello, and thank you to all of you for joining us today on the panel. First, let's open it up. Does anyone in the audience have any questions? We do have some questions prepared, but do any of you have some questions you'd like to ask? Don't be shy. Sure.
In your careers, did you find women to be more enabling your success, or did you find yourself competing more against women, kind of, whether it's tiny attitudes or just whatever our society's kind of created a kind of women?
Right. Great question, and I think different people will have different experiences. I was fortunate enough to work for, in the late 1990s, the former Secretary of State at that time, Terry Land, was the Kent County Clerk. And I began working for Terry in the mid-90s, running the Circuit Court Clerk's office. As County Clerk, you're Clerk of the Court, Director of Elections, Keeper of all the vital records, and Keeper of all the real estate records. Terry was very, and is still, very supportive of women, and so she was instrumental in me becoming the county clerk.
I agree with Mary. It's a good question, and really we probably all will have a little bit different take on it, because I think some of it is, when did you start? I was elected in 1990. And really, 1990, 23 years ago, I hate to say, before some of you were born, not you, Dirk, but it was more geared towards the year of the woman. 1990 helped me, I think. I was the only female candidate of 5 running for the judicial position. And you know, running for judges is a little bit different than Representative Brinks and Commissioner Chivas in some ways, because people don't know who the judges are, and we're not affiliated with a political party. The judicial positions are nonpartisan. So it's not like we can hold up a sign, vote for me, I'm against crime. I mean, who's not against crime? There's you're limited on what judges can say. You're honest, you're trustworthy, or whatever. But the year of the woman, and I say it that way because I was elected, but I was the youngest candidate and the only female. But I think what helped me, I know being a woman helped me, I'm sure it did. Because like it or not, and we probably all have different opinions on this, when I go to vote, I don't just vote on gender. I try to vote on who I think is the most qualified candidate. But I believe that there is diversity that's needed on the bench and in every one of our positions. I don't want to take too long, but I got to tell you this story. Because when I was running for office, like I said, as a judge, you're very limited on what you can say to people. And it's nonpartisan. So you're standing in a parking lot of a grocery store trying to catch people as they come up. Or you're walking door to door. Way before the year of Facebook, text messages, emails. I mean, we didn't have any of that. I walked door to door to every home. My jurisdiction currently covers East Grand Rapids, Ada, Cascade, Lowell, Caledonia, Byron Center, Gaines, Vergennes, Grand Rapids Township. It's not the city of Grand Rapids, but the other part of the county outside of the city. And walking door to door, I remember so vividly, and this is not against Byron Center, but I was in Byron Center walking door to door. And the guy came to the door, and you have your spiel down to 2 minutes. My name is Sarah Smolensky. I'm running for 63rd District Court Judge. I would like you to consider me. I mean, people don't know you. You're a complete stranger to them. You're trying in 2 to 5 minutes to give them an idea that you could be competent, fair, honest, that you're a person of integrity. This guy that came to the door in Byron Center, you could tell I was interrupting a ball game. You could tell I was interrupting his pizza dinner because he had a little bit of it still on his shirt. And I was thinking to myself, you know, you got 2 minutes and people don't want to be bothered. You know what it's like now getting a phone call. I mean, it's right about dinner time. You don't want some solicitation. But he was there and he said, you know, I told him my spiel in 2 minutes. He said, you know, I don't think women should be judges. He said, I don't think women should be judges. I mean, really, what are you supposed to say to that? I mean, you're the candidate. This is a good example of how you have to learn not always to say the first thing in your mind. Because believe me, I had some thoughts I wanted to share. But I said, you know what? I respect your opinion, but I think you're wrong. And this is why. And for 2 minutes, because that's all you get. You know, women represent over 50% of the population. As a judge, we see the whole community, not just people that live within our district, people that drive through, people that are involved in some case, civil, criminal. We need diversity on the bench. This was my spiel then. It's still my spiel now. You guys are probably too young to even know who Bob Barker was. But Bob Barker with The Price is Right, and okay, you know, that was your typical judge format on any TV show. Caucasian, white-haired, grandfatherly looking judge. In the last 10 years, flip on any TV show now. The judges, just in whatever the show is. We have African American, we have Asian American, we have diversity. Women, right, I'm talking women. Everybody looked like Bob Barker back then. And you just can't do it that way because we all have something to bring to the table. But when that guy, I was done with him, said, thank you very much, I didn't even give him my brochure. Because I thought, well, that's going right in the dumper. Why would I want to waste 38 cents that I paid for that brochure to give that guy? So I just said, thank you very much for your time, and I walked across his lawn, slightly digging in my heels. And I said to myself a little prayer to the big guy. I said, Lord, just let me win this election. And if I do, let that guy get caught speeding in East Grand Rapids. Just kidding.
I would have to say, from my point of view, the answer would be no, because there are so few women in county government. There are only 4 female county commissioners out of 19 in Kent County. I just returned from the MAC conference up in Frankenmuth, which is the Michigan Association of Counties, which is county commissioners from all over Michigan. And up there, again, there were 2 things that men were definitely outnumbering women, and African Americans, there are only a handful in county government, at least that showed up to that particular conference. Now, I'm sure around Oakland and Wayne County, you may have more African Americans that decided to run for county government, but by and large, because African Americans tend to live in urban areas, and county government tends to deal with a lot of rural areas, you just don't get a lot of them. And then, again, women don't always see the county as someplace that they might want to have some influence. For me, it was a very, very easy decision, because the way I looked at it was, wait a minute, you have a government body that handles WIC, you have a government body that handles Friend of the Court, I'm a single mom, so I've had to deal with these entities, and you have no single moms on this board that is making these decisions. So for me, it was a very easy leap to say, you need a woman, you need a single mom, I'm gonna run. But by and large, county government tends to still remain male for the most part.
I guess I would say that the women that I've encountered along the way have been very supportive of my efforts. In the State House in particular, we have a very strong group of women who encourage each other and try to work together. And I guess I should clarify, I'm speaking for my caucus at this point. So on the Dem side, those are the folks that I know the best. And there are certainly women on the other side of the aisle who are supportive as well, but I just have had less contact with them. We meet regularly as a progressive women's caucus, and we talk about issues that are affecting us both within our caucus and within state government and throughout the state. We work hard to recruit new female candidates to run in positions that we think that they have an excellent chance of winning in. We also have noted that there's a little bump when we run a female progressive candidate. We tend to get more votes for that person as opposed to an equally progressive male candidate. So as women at the state level, we are very, very motivated to encourage and to recruit and to get other women involved in running. And what Candace said really strikes me as an important piece of that puzzle, because so often that's kind of our bench when we get to state government. Those are the folks that we look to first, those folks who have sort of local elected experience on councils, commissions, city, county government, and other things too, boards of directors, anything like that. Any kind of leadership position, those are folks that we think are great candidates to be recruiting. So in my experience, in my brief political career so far, it has been, the encouragement from the women around me has been one of the huge things that has really kept me going. And in fact, those are some of the first calls I made. I said, I want to talk to somebody who's a mom. I want to talk to somebody who has kids my age, who does this job. I want to talk to men who are doing this with families. I want to know what their time commitment is. I want to know how they're balancing things. I want to know that this is possible to do without being gone all the time. And I think that once you realize that those things, you have certain perceptions about what a certain job may be like. And once you realize that you can do it and you have a lot of really great things to bring to the table, it just takes a little bit of encouragement. So for me, on both sides of that equation, being encouraged and doing some encouraging, it's been a very positive experience.
Well, we need to touch on this, but we do have actually the founder and chair of the Progressive Women's Caucus later on a panel today. So when you're running campaigns, quite often, a lot of the time is an obstacle that you find are donors. So being a woman, did you find it difficult at all to find donors? Were you perceived differently, do you feel, as a woman when you were seeking out donors for your campaigns or anything like that?
For me, since I'm still $28,000 in debt, apparently I'm not very good at asking people for money, but I'm not sure that that had anything to do with being female. I just absolutely abhor asking people for money, and I was not tied in politically to the parties. You pretty much have to be tied into the parties if you want that outpouring of money. I know Winnie was a newly elected official, and I had not run for any election either. My territory is obviously the entire county of Kent, where we have 600,000 people, and I did raise $55,000 to $60,000, but over my several elections, I'm still in debt. So maybe others have better experiences fundraising.
I'll just say, as I indicated, my first election was in 1990, and then I ran unopposed for 18 years. And then I was opposed in 2008. The judges sit for 6-year terms. I'm in the end of my 4th 6-year term. So, like with any candidate, your best campaign is when you're unopposed. It's your favorite word when the year of election comes up, unopposed. And I'm up next year again, and I'm hoping I'll still have that word to use. But the first campaign in 1990, we raised $40,000. Well, we spent $40,000, and I think 10 was my own money, and 30 was what we raised. Fast forward to 2008, recognizing I had 18 years in, we raised $50,000, and probably the same portion was my contribution. But recognizing, though, in the race in 1990, there were judges' races that were spending over $200,000. So comparing my $40,000 to $200,000, I didn't feel like, we won. I mean, it's always great when you win. If you lose, you've still spent the same amount of money, but you don't have the win. Being a judge, again, it's a little bit different than the reps and the commissioners in Mary's position, too, because, we can't solicit for funds in the same way that other candidates can because of the rules. But to me, people would send you $50, $25, $100, $50, sometimes without even asking. I'm still so humbled by that because, sometimes it's people you didn't even know them, but they'd heard of you. I think it helps being from a big family. I mean, think of it. I've got 42 nieces and nephews. I've got, my siblings. My dad was a judge for 25 years. My brother, 27 years. My brother was a judge for 25, 27 years. They're both gone now. But that really, that really helped. So they get to know who you are. But I was a nobody. I was 32 years old and trying to run for office for my first time. To become a judge, I mean, the openings don't happen that often. So when there is an opening, the judge I took over was retiring. And I jumped at the chance. And it really says a lot to have so many people send you money to help you pay for stuff. But I kid you not, you think about your brochure as 48 cents or 88 cents and the mailing costs and everything when you're involved in it. And this last election in 2008, which was kind of a unique one anyway, but anybody can oppose anybody at any time, and that's our way, and that's fine. But my mother died right in the middle of it, and that was such a bummer because, you're going. Really, I literally went from my mother's deathbed the morning of her death to a parade in Byron Center, And I'm thinking, really, what is this all about? Because, I could hear my mother saying, go do the campaign. I could hear her saying it even though she was gone, because that's how mothers are. They support you, hopefully. But it takes a lot of people to come and help you, a lot of people, and it's very gratifying.
It's interesting that Judge Smoleski mentions being related to people because I'm related to a lot of people in Grand Rapids. So if you know someone named Chivas, I'm related to them. So that has been very helpful because a lot of my constituents knew my father, or they knew my uncles, or they knew my cousins, or they knew somebody named Chivas. Oh, you're a Chivas? Okay, I'll vote for you. I have had a couple of very odd commission runs because I have a tendency, like Mary, to not raise a lot of money. I raise about enough to get me through the election cycle, and that's about it. I've also very, very heavily relied on retail politics, meaning I've relied a lot on meeting people door to door, out in the community, etc. So has being a female prevented me from raising money? No. I just, like Mary, tend not to ask folks for a whole lot, and I have a tendency to not run real big campaigns. So Winnie just asked me how much I had spent on the last election cycle, and I told her, and she's like, oh my goodness. So that is more of a personal thing that may change in 2014. In fact, I'm probably intending to change it because I'm being primaried again by somebody that primaried me last year, somebody that announced to me in 2010 before I'd even taken my seat, before I'd ever raised my hand or officially become a county commissioner. This individual said, I'm going to primary you. And I'm at the point where I kind of want to put him to bed so that he won't primary me again. And so I may have to just step it up a notch and able to do that. So.
I guess I would say that as a woman, I'm not sure that it's harder to raise money because I don't have any other experience than the one that I have lived. It would be interesting to me, though, to sort of compare amounts of money raised by various candidates on a broader, like statewide races maybe, or in the legislature, and just see what kind of totals we come up with and see if that really does bear out to be a difficult problem for women. I do think that, I know this is a problem I have. I tend to be too nice. So, you know, I might call you and I'll ask you for $500 and I'll say, but you know, if that's too much, really, $250 is fine. And, you know, and then you keep talking and pretty soon you're down to 100. And, you know, people will give you, you know, people even who want to be generous will sometimes just sort of let you do that. So I think that that's more of an issue for lots of women until you really get the hang of it and really say, look, I have a lot to offer. I've got this, I've got that. This is what I'd like to do. I share your values on whatever topic we're discussing, and this could be coming up in the legislature. I want to make sure that I have the resources I need to represent your views well. Can you help me with that? And to do that with confidence takes some practice, and I think that there's a lot of room for us as women to get better at that. I think it's a bit of socialization, frankly, that we've been sort of taught to be a little bit more polite and nicer and not quite as pushy. And so, and I'll just say that when I hear the numbers that these ladies have talked about for raising money, I am very jealous because our state house races can be in the hundreds of thousands. And certainly I am not raising every single dollar just by myself. There are lots of folks out there who are very helpful, but I spend lots and lots of time and effort trying to raise money and raise support for the causes that I believe in, and so that I can be able to represent them and speak up in the State House when there are issues that affect them. So, but you know, I think last time it was a unique race. I think I raised about $125,000, and there are other races that were very competitive, not too far from here. There's one in Muskegon County that cost in I don't know what it was exactly, $400,000 or $500,000, I think, ended up being spent in that race, just on one side of the race. And so there are $1 million House seats out there, and so it's challenging, and that can be daunting. And when they called me and said, we want you to run for this, I said, I don't have any money. I wasn't planning on doing this. I was working in social work and nonprofits. My husband's a teacher. We've got 3 kids who need to go to college, and they're all in their teens right now. So we didn't have $10,000 sitting around to say, let's kick this off and get started, and then we'll, you know, raise money after that from other sources. So that was a bit daunting for me, and so I said, I need help, and you're going to have to teach me how to do all this stuff. And I had people sit down with me and go through it, and it's still a learning process. And as you can tell, all of us have continual need to continue to raise money, and we're all learning and evolving in that. But your support and understanding of that as constituents and as citizens, and understanding that that does play an important role for us that we need to do. And it's okay to say no, but it's also great just to say yes. You know, to say, and as Sarah mentioned, I've had people send me, I had one person send me, or she gave online and she gave $100, and I was like, wow, I didn't think they were, you know, I thought somebody had lost a job in the household, and I thought, that's pretty amazing. And she called me back and said, I really meant to give 10. Can you fix it? And so we fixed it. But, you know, even that was almost more meaningful because I knew it was really difficult for her. And so there are people out there like that who just give a little bit. And there are other folks who, you know, when you have an event or something, it's a $75 ticket and they give you $100. You know, that's really meaningful, and that's a real shot in the arm. And you got to quit looking at it like you're asking them to do you a favor, but that we're all on the same team here, and that we're working in the same direction for a similar cause, and that it's a good thing to support each other in that.
Just for some information, in case any of you do want to research what it costs to run for various offices, as the Director of Elections for the county, I do have that information in my offices. And for state reps that are outside of one county, if they're totally within a county, I will have it. If they go into a couple of counties in the state Senate, information. That will be at the Secretary of State's website, so you can get this information. Ours is not online yet. It may be online, hopefully before 2014 election. And the reference to when Candace mentioned primaried, at times you will not have a primary opponent. There will not be someone running against you from your party. Then you get through the primary relatively cheaply. My first time out, I did have a primary, and so I had to spend $50,000 of the $80,000 I spent in my first election on that. And then you just go to the general election with a Democrat and a Republican, and depending on your district, will often determine who wins. It often is not about who the best person is for the job. It boils down to something that isn't very pretty, but it boils down to what's the percentage in that district of Republicans and Democrats and who turns out to vote. So if you're running for election, you need to study all of that and study who votes and who votes in what types of elections. So there's a lot of data that is out there for anyone who is interested in running for absolutely any office.
Can I just add one thing, Ross? I just wanted to say, and Mary's inclusive in this, but for Winnie and Candace, I just hope that you as an audience, as young people thinking about what you want to do for your careers, recognize how much they've put on the line. Recognize, I mean, just me hearing Winnie right now, and I've met her before, but we've never sat down and talked, to hear her talk about her family and to have Candace talk about being a single parent, the sacrifices that they make. I don't know if you really get it, because they could easily say, no, I'm not going to do it, and just be in the back. They could easily have, and really, there's probably days they wonder why they didn't say, really. And I want to say that because really, I don't feel like I'm a politician. They are. They're in politics. People will say to you, well, you're a judge and you're into politics. I don't really feel like I'm a politician because we're so limited. I mean, you're supposed to be the fair, impartial judge. You don't take sides. You're not one way or the other. You don't make your ruling based on a person's Republican or Democrat, white or black, in the city, out of the city, whatever. I mean, if you're really true to yourself in terms of what your job is. But for Winnie and Candace to give up so much of what they give to be a representative, to be a spokesperson for us, that should be in and of itself, and I feel a little bit, it's been a great learning experience for me to sit here and just hear what they have to say. Because we should be there, just like Winnie said, we should be there supporting them and helping them because we're all in it together. But when people say, oh, politics, I don't feel like I'm a politician because you can't go and do some of the things that the politician can do when you're the judge. But there are a lot of people that think you're in politics anyways because they think it's all political.
I'm going to briefly follow up on what Mary said, too. I have one of those districts that, for me, my race is the primary race. If I'm being primary, that is where I spend the majority of my money and the majority of my energy, because once I get through the August election, I am gerrymandered. So then I can relax because I think in 2010, I took 75% of the vote. In 2012, I took 82% of the vote in the general. So there's not a whole lot to worry about once I get through the primary, but I seem to just keep developing primary opponents every year, or every other year, rather.
Yeah.
Those percentages rival Middle Eastern dictators.
So for all of you, what motivated you to run, and then what was the first step that you took when you decided to run?
Boy, I shouldn't reveal what motivated me. I am not a politician at all. I'm not interested in running for office, but I was the chief deputy of the county, and the person who was the leading candidate told me she would fire me when she became county clerk. So I walked into the county clerk's office, Terry Land at the time, and said, I'm not sure if she's smart enough to be county clerk. And so at that moment, I decided to run, and Terry supported me. And there are a few better mentors than Terry Land with regard to how to run a campaign. She's run many, and as some of you may know, she's running for federal Senate right now. So she's a very good campaigner and knows everybody there is to know, but I was sort of forced into running.
My path was fourth grade. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I was a lawyer for 9 years. Like I said before, you don't just get to pick and choose when you're going to be a judge because it depends on when the opening is. That's probably what people are saying about me, like when is she going to leave, so there'll be an opening. But, you know, my colleague has been there 41 years. I've been there 23. I mean, that's longevity for a job. It's the longest job I've ever had. I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer, and it was in my youth still that I knew I wanted to be a judge. And it's funny because when I thought about the race back in 1990, I met with my mentor, who was Carol Irons. And Carol Irons was the first sitting woman judge in Kent County, who in 1988, about a week from now, 25 years ago, was shot and killed by her estranged husband in her office at the courthouse. So that was October 19 of 88. I had dinner with her the night before her murder, just the two of us, to talk about me running for Joe White's spot, because Joe White was the judge who was retiring. And we talked honestly. She was a mentor, and she was honest with me, and she was very supportive. But you have to kind of pick and choose. Like we talked about, was I too young? 32. You know, I was the only female. Nobody else, no other females had stepped forward, so we thought it was going to be an all-male race with one female. And you got to believe in yourself. You got to believe in yourself. But like with any new job you get, you guys have been through it too, you're kind of anxious and nervous about it. You believe you can do it, but you haven't done it yet. So how do you really know that new job? And that's kind of how it was for me. But I believed in myself, and I knew that if I could, I knew I was fair, I knew I was honest, I knew I had integrity. It's not like you watch your dad at work and know how to do it. I still had to, you know, learn. But I know that Carol Irons, you know, supported me, and that still, now that thinking back 25 years later when she was killed, that meant a lot for sure.
For me, as I mentioned, it was truly, you had a body that was dealing with some things that I was dealing with as the mother of my son, or rather that I had dealt with as the mother of my son. And when I looked, there were no single mothers. In addition, the gentleman that I replaced was an older African-American gentleman, and his kids were grown, so he wasn't necessarily thinking along the lines of, okay, we have these programs and they affect single moms, and, you know, maybe we need to think like that. So that was really what motivated me. And then it was only after I won my first primary, I happened to be on the phone with one of my mentors, Commissioner Carol Hennessy, and she had called me to tell me I won, and I was like, oh, wow, wonderful, because I was having computer issues, so I was trying to get like the screen up, and it wasn't happening, and so she called, oh, you've won. Yes, I could have called you. And I happened to say, Carol, has there ever been an African-American female on the Kent County Board of Commissioners? And she thought for a minute, and she said, I don't think so. And so I asked around, and no, there had never been. As I've mentioned, county politics doesn't tend to attract African Americans, and it doesn't tend to attract women. So I am the first African American female county commissioner, and I am the fourth African American county commissioner. You had a gentleman in the 1870s from Gaines Township. You had Friley Johnson, Paul Mayhew, Jim Vaughn, okay, fifth, and now me. So it is not, it tends to be, again, rural, and it tends to be male-dominated and Caucasian male-dominated, so.
There are a number of things that motivated me to get into this race, and I'll say first, it was not my plan, my intent to do this at all, and it really came up quite suddenly, and many of you know that story. I don't even want to start talking about all the details of the story because it just takes too long. But there were issues of ethics, there were issues of integrity. We were in a position as Democrats where there was no Democrat on the ballot. There were multiple challenges. So my first thought when people said to me, "We want you to run for this," I said, "Are you kidding? I'm not doing it." And then they talked for about 10 more minutes, and I said, okay, I'll think about it. But the things that really kind of made the difference for me and made me jump into it, because there were a lot of barriers. There were a lot of things to think about, and I'll talk about that a little bit more at lunch. But this was not a normal race at all. And so not only did I not have experience, but there were all these other factors going on. I knew in some ways that was good because it would bring attention and resources to the race, but in other ways it just made it a bigger, more daunting challenge. So in the end, when I sat down and thought about why I should do this, one of the things was, as Candace mentioned, well, first as Sarah mentioned, the integrity, the honesty, all of that. I think that the people we represent deserve that, and they weren't getting that. So that was number one. That was the first thing on my mind. The second thing on my mind was there need to be people who look like me and who have my experiences in Lansing making decisions. I look like more than half the population in one way or another, either being female or being Democrat or being some other characteristic. And I know that that is an unrepresented group in Lansing. In the State House and Senate, we're only, I think the number is 16% of the senators and representatives right now. That means in order to get to about 50%, we need to speak 3 times as loud or 3 times as often just to have our voice heard from our perspective. So to me, that was a great motivator as well. But finally, I would say that, I didn't have a career that naturally led into politics. I was working in nonprofits. I was working in education. I didn't make very much money. I don't know tons of high rollers. I wasn't on all kinds of boards and, connected to powerful people all the time in my daily life or in my work. I was content to do very small things and things that I thought were very important, and they were to many people. But working in those fields and seeing what it's like for families to struggle every day with different barriers to either educational success or success at work or just success in life, or help folks re-entering communities after being involved with the criminal justice system. I had experiences that the state often has interaction with the folks on the other side of that table. And so I felt that those experiences were really, really valuable to bring to the conversation of making policies. So really that was kind of my last straw, was that all of these things that I had been working for, one family at a time, one student at a time, one person at a time, were things that I could now make a bigger difference with as a policymaker at the state level. And so it just gave me a whole new playing field to be able to influence things in a more positive way. Not that I was unhappy doing what I was doing before, but this is an opportunity that couldn't be ignored. And so that's really what motivated me to get involved.
And I'm the second female county clerk in the history of Kent County, which I think is pretty depressing, as Candace was pointing out about representatives on our county commission.
And if I can add, I'm the first woman who lives in Grand Rapids to represent Grand Rapids in the State House. So we've been represented, I think in the 20s or something, there was somebody who lived, a woman who was a farmer, I think, in a rural part of our county, was in the state legislature for I think she was in the Senate. But when they first told me that, I said, that can't be right, this is 2012. Surely that's wrong. And so then we had the women's history folks come and they went through all the records and I said, no, you're right. So.
Our panel is running short, but someone did get my attention that they do have a question.
It helps to be able to text the moderator. And we probably end on this question anyway, but it was actually Judge Smolinski's comment about, whether it's $25 or $50, it's still really important. And I think for a lot of young people, it's daunting getting involved in politics, not just the decision whether or not to run, but how to support a candidate. Many people in this room can't go to $150, gala dinners, right? That's not within their means. So what are a few simple ways that young activists can get involved directly supporting candidates? Really, really helping in the process that, in your opinion, have been really effective or really meaningful toward your campaigns?
Actually, I think anyone who is holding a fundraiser, and I'm not really referring to the dinners, there are a lot of receptions that they charge $25, $40, $50. I think if some young person indicated, if they had called me prior to one of my fundraisers, I only held 3 in the entire 13 years, but if they had called me and said, I'm really, really interested in your campaign or getting involved in politics, I really can't afford it, you'd welcome them. Tell them, come on, see what it's all about. So I think if they just contact the candidate or the candidate committee, I think they'd absolutely let them attend to see what it was all about.
My suggestion would be, not to have them be involved from the monetary standpoint. And really, the fundraisers, at least for the judges, are a bit few and far between, and most of the people that are coming to those are going to support you anyway. So I'm not sure, in the political world, you're probably trying to tie people that you don't know at all and whatever. But in my instance, we had a lot of young people involved that mostly were family members, nieces, nephews, their friends, their high school friends that wanted to help, that knew the Smolensky family, or like Winnie said, or I'm sorry, I think it was Candace who said, if it's Shivish, they're related to you. So they know, but it's coming out, on a Saturday to put signs together. It's doing flyers in the doors. It's walking door to door. Now in this high-tech world we live in with social media and everything, campaigns have changed enormously from when they were years ago. But to have the kids come out to help, with so many hands-on things that they can do. And then even like through their own school and through their own group of friends and from their families and talk to their parents, it's getting the word out. Oh, we know Sarah Smolensky, we support her, she's a good person, Not just funny sometimes, she's a good serious judge, that kind of thing.
I would say, I would kind of dovetail on that with, there are plenty of things as far as you can walk, flyer, volunteer on election day, volunteer to get people to the polls on election day. There are a lot of things that can be done that don't involve necessarily ponying up your own cash, so.
I've been listening to the fund drive on Michigan radio this week, and they'll talk to you about the price of your coffee and things like that. And, I would say that I'm very proud when I see that I get small donations as well as large donations, because I know everybody's in a different position. And the biggest thing I want you to remember from this conversation is that there are things that I did not get involved in that I cared about a great deal. Fundraisers I did not go to as an adult who was pretty involved in politics, but I felt I couldn't afford it. And I really regret that now, looking back at how things really are, because you have this idea that if there's a $75 ticket price or something like that, that you're not welcome if you can't pony up $75. And I know many Democrats for sure, but my particular policy is if you write a check at all, you can come in. I'm not going to look at it, and if it says $10, I'm sorry, you can't stay. That will not be coming out of my mouth. So, I appreciate that. If you're committed to the cause and you want to be there, you want to hear what we have to say at the fundraiser, you want to talk to other supporters, you want to get involved, I am completely supportive of that. I've had people call me and say, I really want to come, I can only give $25, can I come help out with your campaign in some way? And absolutely, that's a great way to do it. As young people, all of that stuff on social media is really helpful. We need a lot of social media is great because it's free, and it's a great way to communicate things that we're doing in Lansing in terms of policies and substantive issues. It's a great way to make people aware of opportunities to be part of their communities and different things that I think build community in the district and in our city that are really wonderful. So, like things, share things, do all those things that work. You guys know better than I do exactly how it all goes. I've got a young staff member who I call once in a while and say, you have to help me do this because I don't know how to do it. But those are ways that you guys can contribute. You can help us be more savvy with that stuff, but you can also help us, once we put something out help other people know about it. It's like the new word of mouth. And just a simple, tagging somebody or putting a photo up or something like that is it's a great help, and it's something that I know different people watch constantly. So that's one thing to do. Other things, knocking on doors and making phone calls during election season especially, it gets very intensive. I know that we send groups out, and I go out with groups to knock on doors, and we'll blanket an entire community. And if we get 10 or 20 people, we can really cover some ground. And so those are really easy ways for young, energetic folks to participate. And I sometimes have older folks come in and they say, I'd love to go knock on doors, but it's going to take me all day. So we put them on a phone, and they're great. They love that. So everybody has something to offer. So figure out what that is and offer it. Sometimes a candidate might not know what you have to offer, so you might have to come up with that yourself and just say, look, I got a little bit of money, or I don't have any money, but I've got some time on Saturday mornings. Do you want 2 hours or whatever? So don't be shy about it. You do have something to offer, even if it's not money.
All right, well, thank you, all of you, for joining us for this panel. We're going to take a short break if anyone needs to go use the restroom, and then we'll begin lunch. So it's my pleasure to introduce State Representative Winnie Brinks. As you know, she represents the District of Grand Rapids. For those of you who don't know her story, it's an incredible story and certainly memorable. I know at the time when she was recruited, I lived in her district, so it was definitely an exciting time. And I know, having been one of her constituents in the past, she's an outstanding leader, so please welcome Winnie Brinks.
Just making sure I don't have things in my teeth still, so. Well, I want to thank you first for this opportunity to speak to you today. It's a real pleasure to be here, and such a beautiful day to be here in Grand Rapids. As Ross mentioned today, I am the representative for the 76th House District here in Grand Rapids. And while I am thrilled and honored to represent our city, I have to tell you this is not the big career move that I had planned. In May of 2012, when I was approached about the possibility of running for office, I was happy with my job at a local nonprofit. I found it rewarding to work with people, to overcome barriers to retaining their jobs, and to help them move into better positions within and between the businesses that we served. Personally, as the mother of 3 daughters, I was an involved parent and volunteer for various causes and busy with the activities of a busy family life. While I was interested and involved in politics, I had never imagined myself pursuing working in politics full-time. I was, and I still am, particularly active in advocacy regarding K-12 education and what we can do as a community to ensure that every single child in Michigan gets an excellent education that sets them on a course for a fulfilling life. While I was constantly frustrated by the lack of progress we have seen on these issues as a state, I was pretty comfortable doing that advocacy work from the sidelines. Gandhi said it best when he said, "Whatever you do may seem insignificant, but it is most important that you do it." And then, May 14, 2012 came along. That's the day that my predecessor switched parties at the last minute, right before the deadline to file for last year's election. Rumors and evidence of unethical activities swirled around his story. People felt betrayed and angry. Democrats in Grand Rapids, Kent County, colleagues in Lansing, and indeed Democrats from all over the state struggled to understand what had happened and to come up with a strategy in response. Before long, local party leaders and advocates and activists of every Democratic stripe were coming up with their own short lists of potential candidates to run against him. Education, labor, women's groups, environmentalists, you name it. It turns out that my name was popping up on some of those short lists. So a couple of weeks later, I was asked to consider running. I wasn't sure about taking that chance at all. I knew it would require a lot of time and effort, and I'd never run for office before, so I'd have to learn the ropes and do it in a hurry, since the election was only a few months away. And this was no normal campaign. Because of how things had transpired with the party switch of my predecessor, there was no Democrat listed on the ballot, and I would have to wage a write-in campaign for the primary. Even I, with very little political experience, knew that that would be a challenge. I'd have to raise tens of thousands of dollars and quite possibly hundreds of thousands. I'd have to knock on thousands of doors. I knew it would mean a lot of long days and evenings that I would not be able to spend with my family. And needless to say, that was not exactly the summer plan that they had. I knew I'd have to leave my job to do this right in the short time frame that we were left with before the election, and that meant foregoing income. I'd also have to do all of that without any guarantee that I would be successful. So as I contemplated all the changes, the challenges, other names were discussed as well. Polls were done, positives and negatives were evaluated, conference calls and stakeholder opinions were flying all over Grand Rapids and beyond. After some pretty intense meetings with various stakeholders, I finally got a phone call. They wanted me to run. So I prepared myself to take Eleanor Roosevelt's advice, to do one thing each day that scares you, and I declared my candidacy. In retrospect, I managed to find several things to do each day that scared me, and so I have this little secret hope that Eleanor Roosevelt would have been very proud of me. The next few months, I spent raising support, knocking on thousands of doors, and talking to voters. You throw in press events, candidate forums, fundraisers, meetings with various groups and individuals for their support, and there was little time for anything else. My husband did double duty running a household, parenting, and school shopping with our 3 daughters, which was quite an experience, the way they tell it. And the kids helped out stuffing envelopes and knocking on doors. I had a great team of dedicated people around me, and we worked night and day, 6 days a week. Running a campaign is physical, emotional, and intellectual challenge, but we met it head on. In the end, it paid off. On November 6th, the voters of the 76th District elected me to represent them in the State House. So that gives you a taste of my story and my unlikely rise to the State House of Representatives. And when I look back at the experience, I'm impressed by how much I learned about our city by walking through the many neighborhoods and meeting with people from all walks of life. I heard about people's struggles and the courage they've mustered to get by and to make a good life in spite of those challenges. I learned about the things that make them angry. I learned about the kindness they have in themselves to help those around them. And I learned about their financial stresses, but also the wealth of things they have to share. The stories I heard on the campaign trail and in my 23 years of working with women, children, and families are the reason that I fight for the things that matter most to people of Grand Rapids. The stories of these people are the reason I fight for greater economic security for the families of our state. Their stories are the reason that I fight for children to get the education that they deserve, that will set them on a path to prosperity and self-sufficiency and prepare them for the jobs of the future that old folks like me cannot even imagine. Their stories are the reason that I fight for women to have access to affordable and comprehensive health care, and for families to get the coverage they need to live happy and productive lives at work and at school and at home. It occurred to me one day that before, I was fighting for one family at a time, one student at a time, and one woman at a time. But because I had the courage to move from my comfortable sideline where the action is to where the action is, I have the opportunity to fight every day for the good of our whole community in Lansing. That's why I'm glad to be here today to talk to you about women in leadership. If we're going to achieve policies that are fair to women and families, we all need to work together to get more women serving in state government, and indeed in all levels of government. There's a lot of work to be done. Today, women make 74 cents to every dollar earned by a man with the same qualifications and experience for the same work. And that's a bothersome statistic just in and of itself. But the implications of that are immense. This adversely affects families, making them more financially vulnerable, with implications for everything from home ownership to success in school to college attendance. We need to take steps to protect women from wage discrimination. We recently watched Congress drag its feet in passing the Violence Against Women Act that funds shelters across the country. Violence and abuse shatter too many lives, and we clearly have a lot of work to do to educate lawmakers about the importance of these issues. We need to stop lawmakers who would put crippling restrictions on women's access to comprehensive health care. These are just a few examples, and I could go on, but the point I want to make is that we need women to speak up and tell their lawmakers what matters to women and what policies would harm us. We need women attending school board meetings and city council meetings and legislative hearings. So I'd like you to take a second to picture yourself at one of those meetings, being part of the conversation. Think about whatever board or group you want to influence: a board of directors, a school board, an executive committee, the legislature, whatever. Do you have a group in mind? Imagine yourself there. Now answer this question. What side of the table are you sitting on? Are you sitting in the audience? Or are you sitting at the table giving your input to the decision-making body? Are you testifying? Or are you sitting in the chairs at the front of the room with the nameplates and the titles and the microphones? And are you running that meeting? Are you asking the important questions? And are you making decisions? Don't get me wrong, all of those places are good places to be at different points in your life. But today, as we discuss women in leadership, I urge you, if you have not already, to start picturing yourself on the side of the table where the decision makers sit. Just think how much more effective it would be if we were speaking up and attending those meetings, not only as concerned citizens, but also as colleagues and members of boards, and as commissioners and legislators. Now, I know that not everybody wants to, or can, or should run for office, but wherever you are in your leadership journey, there are things that each of us can do. Find a candidate or a leader that you believe in. Go door to door or make phone calls if it's a political situation. Give a little money if you can give a lot. Volunteer to lead and suggest women for leadership positions in our community, in our workplaces, and in our governments, and even in our homes. Inspire and mentor other women who want to get involved, or go out and get involved and find another woman to inspire or mentor you. As for the legislature, frankly, women's voices aren't heard enough in the Capitol, and there sure seems to be a lack of women's perspective in our deliberations. I'm doing what I can to help bring some balance to our state government, but a project this big cannot be done alone. My colleagues, some of whom you have heard from or will hear from today, are doing what they can as well, but it can't be done by all the women currently serving in the legislature. In fact, it can't be done by all the women currently serving at all levels in state and local government. If we're going to make sure that the policies that are fair to women and to families succeed in Michigan, it's going to take all of us working together. So let's get out there and make Eleanor Roosevelt proud. Do something today that scares you and leads you one step farther on your leadership journey. Because sometimes it is not enough to wish for better leaders. Sometimes we have to become the kind of leader we want to see. Thank you.